Whether you're new to pool and practicing the basics, or a more experienced player performing drills to improve your shot making and positional play, the Drill Partner is perfect for you.
What is up, everybody? It's Molina Mike here live from Hanoi, Vietnam. Let me know in the chat if you guys can hear me and see me all right. I'm out here solo, and I was supposed to do a show last night with Mike, and the plan. I called him up as soon as I got back to the hotel room. I said we got to do something, man, and he said, yeah, just give me till midnight, which is noon Central Time for Mike. And I said, yeah, sure, no problem. I've been needing to stay awake anyway to try to like fight this jet lag that I haven't been able to like beat, man. I've been getting up every day like at 10:30 in the like sorry 2:30 in the morning, no matter what time I go to bed at night. So um, it's been tough to kind of get like transitioned here. But anyway, long story short, I passed out and I knew I wasn't going to be able to make it with Mike. So anyhow, thanks everybody for hanging out with us. I'm going to go to the venue here in a little bit, but obviously we couldn't overlook or miss an opportunity to talk about all the stuff that went down over the last really the last like 12 hours, 8 hours, something like that. So we'll see if everybody comes on in here. Hit the like, hit the share button. Let me turn on some of these things on the outside so that way our sponsors can get some love. Big shout out to them. We wouldn't be out here if it wasn't for everyone who helped out and supported everything. So let me get these up. We'll turn on the chat so that way I can hang out with you guys, just like my man Collins would do. So let me know what you guys want to hear about. Any questions you may have for me, and I'll do my best to answer them for you guys. So anyhow, yesterday was the press conference. I'm about, let's say, depending on traffic, I'm maybe like 15 to 30 minutes away from the venue. Really nice spot out here at the Five Residence. Beautiful, like apartment style hotel. And anyway, I go out there to the venue, didn't know what to expect. And it was like just overwhelming, man. I mean, you walk in there or you drive up in there, and the building is just so massive. Security, everyone's getting their credentials, everyone's players are trying to get in to hit some balls, all that good stuff. And then it was like a proper, sporting media thing. You get in there and there's camera crews as far as the eye can see. The chairs that, if you look on any of their press conferences, like at other events, if they even have them, usually pretty empty. In this case, like it was just full, man. I couldn't even grab a seat. I mean, given the fact that I was late, of course, was to be expected. Um, but yeah, no, it was great. I mean, they had Jason on stage, Emily, Huang, which was great, and that kind of like was real awesome to see. Just having spoken with them a little bit last year and touching base with them in Da Nang, I remember like what this event meant for him. Especially him being the pride of Hanoi and of Vietnam, and so for him to miss last year was pretty big. Fast forward, obviously, you guys know about all the drama that's been going on. ACBS, WPA threatening bans on players going back to last year. Um, yeah, and then of course this year it's no different, right? Everything's kind of the same. A little bit of a backstory if you guys are, have your head under a rock for a little bit. Um, Players all kind of got together in solidarity, put out a joint statement on across all their social media platforms, and really it's the top like 10, 15 players somewhere around there, basically saying, hey, listen, we don't approve of the bans, and we're going to stand together, and we're I don't know if they're necessarily saying team this or team that, but basically saying that, hey, listen, we don't appreciate what's going on, and so we're going to kind of use our power, right? Because they've been the ones kind of keeping it quiet, maybe talking individually here and there, but for the most part, like nothing collectively. And so they say we're not going to be playing WPA events for the last, however many months. This was on the horizon. What was coming up was the World A Ball Championship, which is a big deal, right? Predator paid a lot of money to host that event. However, they outsourced that sponsorship through Yalin. I'm sure it was a decent paycheck. And then of course the WPA and giving them the rights to that event and them rejuvenating it, it's a big deal. And so a lot of the players sitting out, including defending champion SVB, was a part of that group of players who said, hey, we're not going to, be attending that event. Guys like Albin, guys like Josh, guys like, I'm trying to think, Kachi, Feder, Fran, David, Jason, obviously, who's always been Team Matchroom throughout all this. But it was cool, man. I mean, you got to see a lot of these guys who they. I've said plenty of times in the show. I feel like all these guys are mercenaries, and they're very much in it for themselves and how they can survive hand to mouth for the next event. And um, it sounds like disrespectful, and I'm not meaning it to be that way. It's just everyone's got their own business to handle, right? Nobody knows what someone's expenses are. Nobody knows what support they're getting. Nobody knows, what help they're getting on the back end, whether through sponsorship or federation or through whatever, right? So to some extent, I understand, but um, I've said plenty of times, I don't think that there's a show without them, and so, but you can fade a couple, you can't fade, all of them. And so, um, anyhow, they were all together. We're not playing WPA events. Then, of course, you guys kind of know what happened since then. Josh pulls up, Albin pulls up, guys like Kazakis and Mario He are out there. Dennis Grabe. I'm not surprised seeing guys like that out there. They got their own things to go and handle, and it's probably in their best interest to play in a lesser stacked field, right, for a chance of getting more money and building a bankroll and all these things. And so, but at the same time, I think some of those guys weren't putting out statements to begin with. Josh was, Albin was, and then of course he backtracked on that and um, really took a bath like online. I was pretty surprised like how passionate fans were throughout all this. Like it reminds me of sports, and which is kind of cool to some extent, but it's also a catch 22 like in other regards, right? Like it's not just going to be this wave of positivity, right? You're going to get the good and the bad, and it's just part of it whenever you're on a public stage now. Their platforms and whoever they go and play for and all that, they're just going to have to fade it, whether it's Predator, WPA, Matchroom, whatever. But when you think about everything that's gone on over the last few weeks, Josh's been the one to take a bath, and it all kind of came to a head last night with news breaking. I got a message to head out back to the arena. I was already back at the hotel. Um, I got a message saying, "Hey, you might want to come back over here," so I hop on a motorcycle, scooter thing, whatever it was, and it was through 6 p.m. traffic, which is nuts in Hanoi. I had no idea what the fuck I was getting myself into for that. And anyway, I'm bobbing and weaving throughout traffic and finally make my way out there. And then that's whenever I had heard maybe about 20 or so minutes before news came out online on social media that Josh Filler has been, the wording's interesting, removed. And if you know Matchroom and you know their team, the wording isn't like by mistake, right? Everything's by design. And so the wording was kind of interesting, has been removed. Obviously, that leads to a lot of questions, who removed them, whether it was himself or whether it was Matchroom. What I can tell you is, uh, if you think Josh has given up on that paycheck, you're wrong. Like I mentioned before, all these guys are their own businesses, and so there's no way in hell that he would um, he would have removed himself from that event just for the financial aspect alone, right? Let alone the notoriety and the prestige of being on that first team. Um, Matt Poland asks, and by the way, Matt had a great take on this. Um, in I forgot which thread it was, but it was just an awesome statement by him. But anyway, Matt asked, were there players involved in the decision to pull him? Um, I don't know what I can tell in that regard. What I can say though is I was surprised to hear over the last week or so how many players felt betrayed by everything going on, and because the way I always saw it, putting myself in their shoes, it's like I would think that they understand why they made that decision when it comes to the financial aspect of it. Just putting myself in the player's shoes. And so, and especially them being so tight knit, and don't get me wrong, like they're all competing against one another, but they're also very much like a fraternity, and like with the same hand. But I was shocked to hear the amount of players that really feel betrayed and let down by. everything going on with Josh and Albert and all these guys basically pulling up, and it's a slap in the face is what I've been hearing, and they knew the power that they all had coming together, and so for them to jump ship like that when you know they were all taking a step forward together was really disappointing from them. And I was blown away, man. And physically, I could see as I'm talking to a lot of these guys just how much it was weighing on them. I show up in Da Nang in the airport. I want to say, I think I had a day off after the event. So it would have been 2 days after the Perry ends, and there's players all at the airport, right? And I'm shocked to still hear to having spoken to players there at the airport. I'm boarding my flight, right? Like we're there, we're going through security and checking in and everything, and guys are doing the same thing. And they were still unsure whether or not they were going to be attending the event. And they were like distraught. I mean, not let alone the fact that it's costing them thousands of dollars one way or the other. They have the potential of not getting thousands of dollars of support, just depending on how their federation is and what being in good standing means. But honestly, I didn't expect to hear the amount of players that were disappointed, betrayed, was a word that got thrown around a lot. But with the other hand, some of these other players that are making this decision, they're saying, "Hey, listen, I can't earn a living just playing Matchroom events, right?" So, like, I get that part of it as well. I think a lot of the issue with Josh in particular and why he's kind of, on this witch hunt right now is because of the way that he handled things, you know. And so I'll jump into that a little bit more here in just a little bit. Let me know if you guys have any more questions. I tried to get Mike on. I texted him when I got up this morning at about like I want to say it was maybe like 7 o'clock. I got up again around 2:30. Luckily, I went back to sleep, but I actually felt like I got some decent hours in today, and I feel a little refreshed. I'm gonna hit the gym here in a little bit, so um, it'll help get me back on track. I'm hopeful for anyway. So um, anyway, I see Raymond in the chat. Ray, if you'd like to join me, I can send you the link, buddy. Shoot me a PM or shoot me a text, and I'd love to have you on. I don't really like doing shows by myself, but I feel like this episode in particular was pretty important to come on, and not just that, but I plan on doing pregame shows, which would be evening in the U.S. and then also maybe in about 12 hours from now as well after the day concludes. So um, anyhow, Nate asks, would a players union make a difference? I don't know that it would necessarily make a difference. I think it's hard to get all those players on the same page, and um, you have this mix of players that have different agendas. There's players that are on the outside looking in, and they're more realist. When I say outside looking in, as far as like being able to snap off a major, or maybe on the tail end of their career, where they're more they have their own reasoning why they want things to be a certain way versus a younger player or a top 10 player who may want things a different way. And so it's a generational thing. And so to get these players all on the same page, I think is next to impossible. I think it's um, I think it's got about as much chance of happening as I do uh, thinking that the WPA and Matchroom are going to make up. So if that gives you any indication as far as where my faith is at, there, then you can take that for what it's worth. Kevin asks, Mike, did you see the press release before they changed the wording and shorten it? I did. I did. And so um, I know there was some talk about contractual obligations and things like that, and why they changed it, I don't know. But the contractual obligations, while not knowing the specifics, and I can only assume, which I'm good at doing that and putting my foot in my mouth and looking like an idiot. But there's things you have to do, X, Y, and Z. You have to do if you're going to be one of these players like a Josh Filler. And what I mean by that is, if you're playing in these um, big exhibition, highly promoted um, events, there's obligations you have to do, right? Like promotions you have to do. You have to be at events pumping it up. You have to be part of storylines and filming and press conferences and um, other things, and that's just part of the routine, and that's one thing that, like, for the Mosconi Cup, especially being in the position that I'm in, I appreciate that because I know I can get access to guys whether they want to do it or they don't want to do it, because Matchroom forces their hand to do it, which is great, and they should be in front of a camera and um, answer some good questions. And for Josh, look, they do a lot of posting online on social media. Pia does a really good job of keeping up with the Killer Fillers page. But if you look at that page, it's plural, right? So there's two of them. And so this predator mindset of I'm just gonna look the other way just doesn't really hold a lot of water, at least not for me anyway. And if nothing else, it really just adds fuel to the fire when it comes to fans wanting to pick at you. It's because it's like, yo, you see everybody, all the things that are being said about you. And while you can't defend yourself on every single person with an opinion, putting out some kind of statement that is a lot better than what's been out there prior to is necessary, man. I mean, people forget, like, when you're on that stage and you get to play in these exhibitions or high profile matchups, um, there's certain things that come with it, right? Like, you're going to get celebrated depending on what part of the world that you're in, but at the same time, you're going to get villainized. And in the age of social media, people now more than ever just have opinions, and so I think turning the other cheek is it's just not very smart. But if you are going to go out there and put out um, a statement, just make sure it's thoughtful. That it's sincere more than anything. I just sent Ray a message, so um, he'll be joining in here in a little bit. And so, but let me see if I can get him in here. Restream kind of changed its strategy, not strategy here. Restream kind of changed its setup here. But let me see if I can bring in Ray. Ray, how are you, buddy? Can you hear me?
What's up, man? Doing good. How are you?
I
How's
I'm doing
Vietnam
good.
treating
Okay,
you?
now I can hear you. Vietnam's been okay. It's I take that back. It's been more than okay. I've loved being here. I've not loved the sleep schedule that I've been on. But everything outside of that I've been just falling in love with. Like, I can't tell you
Oh, yeah.
the enthusiasm and passion that fans have. We were I left the venue last night, and so, like I mentioned at the start of the show, we had this like food tour thing scheduled and planned, and that's where we were heading to. And I get the message, hey, you need to come back to the arena. And so, while I love doing tourist things, I came here to work, and so I hopped my ass on a Grab, which is basically like an Uber, right? In the middle of rush hour, some guy pulls up on the sidewalk on a scooter. I hop on, I head over there, do my thing at the venue again, and then I hit up Oscar and I said, "Where are you guys at? I want to hop back in this food tour thing that I've been looking forward to." And so I meet about halfway through it. And as we're leaving one of the restaurants, a guy stops him and says, "Hey, you're Oscar Dominguez, right?" And you can tell he's Vietnamese. And he said he'd been stopped like that at least, a handful of times. And I've heard the same thing from a lot of players. So everywhere you go here, it's like it's a different type of fan, which is great to see, especially for given where the sport's heading to.
Well, I was watching a little bit of the live streams from the other day where I think Shane played Bassett and then
Yeah,
he had also played Duong. And after the match, just the table swarmed. People just want to take photos
yeah,
and get autographs and stuff. So yeah, the fandom there is pretty amazing. And like the place they were playing, the Perry, has 100 tables. Like I don't think I've seen a pool room in my life where there's 100 tables, and that place is booming. And last year I heard about several places that had 70 plus tables and they were
yeah.
packed. So it's definitely like a cultural thing. I kind of at this point consider it like the next Philippines. It's just that
You know,
level of inspiration for pool, and maybe more. So
yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to hear, them producing some top level talent, even more than where they're at right now in the next 10 plus years, just given
yeah,
the way that the country's setting up. The first time I got here, I went to go have dinner with some friends of mine from Lao Mao, and they have a really big social media page, and they're involved in streaming the event. And what they told me was that all this happened because of the pandemic, so everyone is forced inside, and
it's,
they weren't able, which is kind of ironic given how it was in the States.
yeah.
Um, but anyway, that they were saying that you know they couldn't play sports, they couldn't get together, they couldn't do this and that, just like everywhere else in the world, but pool was the exception.
Got it.
and they were able to get together to go to the pool room. And so by the whatever your opinion is on the pandemic, by that happening, it ended up starting to sprout this booming country with a ton of passion and its fans of all ages, and it's really just inspiring and beautiful to see. But it also produces these, how it is in the pool world. It's like everyone's kind of looking, and they want to sink their fangs into you, and they want to make sure and not give up control of the honey hole. And so that's kind of like where we're at right now. Obviously,
Right.
you've seen everything going on social media, Ray, and you're always got a great opinion. I'd love to get your thoughts on. I'll start with the Josh situation, just given the back and forth of it, and his initial response of saying, "I'm gonna not play events," and then going and playing the World 8 Ball.
I think it's one of these things where, you know, there are players like Kachi, for instance, who didn't say much at all, and kind of like went about their business kind of quietly, and you know, didn't go back and forth. I think that's where most people have their grievance with Josh, is that he said one thing and then did another thing. And I think just from people don't like that, just in general, especially when you're when I kind of look at things from a leadership perspective. And if you look at there's this great reference, it's like a pyramid, right? And at the bottom of the pyramid, when you don't have leadership at all, you're just kind of starting off. You have all this leeway. You can go back and forth and do whatever. Nobody really cares because there's no responsibility on your shoulders. But as you start kind of climbing this pyramid towards the top, the expectations and the requirements of you become greater, and you have more responsibility on your shoulders. And once you get to the top, you have no leeway. Really, you have to really kind of walk a straight line. And so I think whenever you're talking about leadership in the sense of how you impact people beyond yourself, the standard sets itself. And so when somebody doesn't do that, then you understand that maybe they're not really in it for everybody else. They're in it for themselves, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. If he's just going to be clear about like, hey, I have other responsibilities and other things that are pressures and requirements of me from my sponsors, and that becomes a priority, then that's okay. You know what I mean? You can just say, I'm not in a position to risk these other things, you know what I mean? Because I have to feed my family. I got to take care of the stuff. I have my sponsors and my stuff, and pool's kind of tough.
Which is completely fair, Ray, right? Because
totally.
you don't know what it's like walking in their shoes.
And all that. And I say that just to play devil's advocate for
Right.
Josh. Now, having said that, Matchroom is a brand that's growing, and they have players who are invested in trying to make a shift for how players are treated and all this other stuff. And so really his kind of flip-flopping and then the public statement and just kind of like brushing it off left Matchroom with really no choice, because if they don't make a stand, and Josh being such a high profile player, it kind of gives them a great opportunity to make a stand, because it shows like, hey, we don't really care, who it is. If you're gonna say one thing and do something else, and make us look like we don't have any credibility or stance, then that's okay. You can just take your talents elsewhere. And so this is kind of like a statement almost that needed to be made from Matchroom's perspective, just to uphold the players that are invested and defend them. So I would not be surprised if there was, conversations had between, Emily and Matchroom do a really great job of communicating with the players, and working with them and kind of taking feedback. And if some of them are just like, hey, this is not cool, like he can do that if he wants, but at that point you don't get special treatment, or you don't get accommodations. And maybe you get certain things revoked. Like, hey, if maybe this is a deeper conversation between his side and like all that other stuff, and he's just the person caught in the crossfire. But
I think to some extent that's probably fair. I don't think any of these guys want to be the poster child for one side or the other, and I don't think that they signed up to be that way. And some guys are just uncomfortable being in that stage. Look at Shane. Shane is a prime example of that. Shane doesn't like being caught up in the politics of it all. Now, I mean, he did, along with everyone, not everyone else, but the few guys who put out that statement, but that's not like in his comfort zone, you know? And so, but integrity, right? Like if you do something, if you say you're going to do something, you follow through with it, no matter if you have a change of heart or a sponsorship, whatever. Like if you're going to take the worst of it because of a choice you made, that's still your choice. You know, like you made it, so honor it. And I think like I'm just speculating because I don't know the talks that he had with the WPA when they got to him in New Zealand. I don't know the talks that he had with Predator when they got to New Zealand. But I would imagine they were a big influence as far as why he went back on it. You know, it seems very like Predator like, just given how they've taken a stance over the last year and a half and things they've said publicly and not said publicly. But it's like you make your bed, you kind of you sleep in it. And I would have rather, this is just me, I would have rather taken the worst of it with them, meaning my sponsors and whatever else, versus going back and on my word, because you only got one opportunity for trust, right? And don't get me wrong, you can rebuild it, but it's never going to be the same, you know.
Yeah,
And so to go back like that, especially publicly, and for why he was doing it, it couldn't have been any worse.
And I think for somebody like Josh, the opportunity was there to really have the most leverage possible, maybe with your sponsors of any other player, because you have a direct relationship and you're such a visible face that you could have been like, you know, you could have been a direct advocate to kind of meet the needs that the other players were kind of talking about. And really the whole point of this other stuff is like, you know, why are we being subjected to this stuff? And so to kind of step back from that is just kind of like dodging the bullet a little bit and just kind of copping out.
100%.
Yeah, people don't necessarily find that integrous or honorable, and you know that tough stuff, that tough leadership stuff, you know, it's not for everyone. Not everybody really wants that smoke.
Well, you got to be built differently, for sure.
You got to be very level-headed about it. Like, for instance, I think Federer's done a really great job of handling all this stuff. Like, I mean, to publicly say you're not going to play the World 8-ball and then to fly to New Zealand and to be sitting in the stands and like supporting your girlfriend, who, you know, is now fiance. You know, like that's super suave of the guy. You know what I mean? He's in a good position, you know, obviously financially.
Well, it helps when you picked up $250,000 a few months ago. You know what I mean? So
I'm sweating it so much, you know, but just, you know, that to me, there's a reason why people admire that and people like that. He's not being overly negative. He's made his peace. He's like, hey, I'm not going to support your tournaments. I'm just going to go watch my girlfriend, you know, go deep into this tournament and sit in the stands. You can put me on your cameras if you want, whatever, no gripes. Yeah. And, you know, I'm going to speak with my actions. And I think people admire that and can resonate with that a lot more because he knows, hey, this is costing me, you know, Federer's favorite to go very deep in that tournament, maybe win. So he's making an investment in something longer term. And whether you agree with the politics of one side or the other, just the stance and the honoring of, because he could have, you know, Federer could have flip-flopped, right? Like, well, I'm here, I might as well play. And,
why wouldn't he want to swing at 75,000 when half of the monsters are out of there? And he would have been a favorite to meet Josh in that final.
Yeah, but Federer also understands the demographics that he's lobbying for. He has a huge following in the Asian community now, especially.
But that's the bigger picture thinking of Federer. And listen, that's not to be overlooked when it comes to Josh, because Josh is just coming back from a trip here in Vietnam, doing exhibition. And so, like, how much is that going to hurt him? I'm guessing massively.
Yeah. And it's not just the short-term stuff. I mean, obviously Josh has done very well in China, and he's won, you know, the China Open. That's a WPA event. So he figures like, you know, I'm getting what I need out of this scenario, and that's that. And that's what he's going to get, you know. I think there's an opportunity cost whenever you make decisions one way or another. And he's stuck kind of walking into those things now. So there's, unfortunately, you know, there's a great saying that says, you know, good decisions are a product of experience, and experience are a product of bad decisions, you know? And so sometimes you have to go through and make poor decisions to maybe think about things a little differently and gain some wisdom. And he's a young guy, so.
Desiree had something funny the other day. She said, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes,
Right.
and so that seemed very, very fitting given the circumstances. And, yesterday I showed up for the press conference, Ray, and I was talking to Victor, another gentleman out there as well. And we were talking about that situation, everything going on. And I had no idea what was coming, a few hours later. But I said, listen, I wouldn't blame them for going and banning them, because it's a slap in the face to everyone else, and piggybacking off of what you said earlier, look, if you're a coach or whatever, or in a leadership role, and if one of your main guys isn't playing ball, that's the one you want to set the example with, to let
Yeah,
everyone know, hey, listen, nobody's untouchable here. There's
you have
and
you have to. There has to be accountability. Otherwise, you lose credibility. If you
yeah,
don't enforce
for
accountability,
sure.
that's just the nature of the game. And just from an optics standpoint, you have guys who are investing and doing what they have to do. And if they're sacrificing entries into tournaments that they're favored to win, and they're supporting you, and then the other guy who's also a figurehead doesn't do that, and he gets to double dip, and he doesn't have a repercussion, then it starts to undo that's why I think the initial statement when Matchroom released, there was the integrity issue there, or the team dynamic stuff, because I'd imagine that the other players who are saying like, hey man, like, you know what I mean? Like, I could have been at this tournament too, trying to make money. It's not about, if you're gonna say you're gonna kind of team up with us to make a statement, then do that. If not, then don't waste our time, and don't,
I don't know if I can buy the lack of chemistry when it comes to having Jason Shaw and having FSR on a team, and Kachi on the team, because that's someone that Josh has been rubbing elbows with going back to Euro tours. That's somebody that Josh has been in Mosconi Cup battlegrounds with over and over again.
I think it's an integrity thing, and like, I think relationships are there's relationships that may have been fractured a little bit, or damaged, because there's a lack of trust. And so when you don't trust somebody, you're supposed to go to war with them. That's a problem. And I think the initial statement that was then edited, you know what I mean, and replaced, specifically spoke to that. And I think somebody like Jason, who values that very highly, I think he's probably at the top of when it comes to establishing those kind of principles amongst the players, especially for his team in Team Europe. Like, that's probably a thing that doesn't sit well with him. So I'd imagine, this is of course speculation, I'm not in those conversations, but knowing Jason, how much he values the team side of stuff in room, and how he's kind of like, he'll go to bat for them. It doesn't matter really who's in his way, so
I mean, he's very much their poster child, and has built his brand and reputation, on their stages. Don't get me wrong, he's had successes elsewhere, but you're never going to get the love hate that you have for someone without playing on a Matchroom stage, without playing on a World Cup of Pool, or a US Open, or whatever, you know what I mean, on any of their invitational events, Mosconi Cups especially, And so, anyhow, if you guys are just joining us, we're talking Hanoi a little bit here in a little bit. We're talking filler right now. Yesterday, word came out he was removed from the Reyes Cup, or withdrew from Reyes Cup, I think is the actual wording that they used. It didn't really say who was withdrawing him, whether it was Josh pulling up or Matchroom pulling him out. I can tell you that when I head to the venue here in a little bit, I'll have my stuff with me, and I don't mind asking some questions. So I'm going to see if we can, get a chat with Carl, get a chat with Jay, get a chat with Emily, and see what they're willing to, talk about. I'm guessing not a ton, just given how that statement was put out there, but I want to get your thoughts on them removing him from the Reyes Cup, and just what message that did send to everyone.
Yeah, I think they were in a position where it was probably the only thing that they could have really done. It kind of needed to be done, perhaps, maybe in the short term, to kind of save Josh as well, a little bit of heat coming from the Asian fans, and like that stuff was, his welcoming might not have been as polite. but it was going to be a hostile environment likely anyways, if it's anything like the Mosconi Cup. But
Right.
again, I think if you're in a position where if you're going to make a statement and establish credibility with the stances that you're making, then it needed to be now. And this was the first time that, something like that came up. So from Matchroom's perspective, I think, to them, him having the duplicity is a kind of like, you would say, behavior that kind of is detrimental to the Matchroom brand, right? You would probably say that. So, do you want to have and give credence to somebody who's doing that if he's hurting the brand by, kind of wishy-washing and doing something when it comes to this Asian market? Conversations about, was Hanoi going to go off, and it's like, there's a lot of pressure on that. It's a very important tournament. So for him not to show up and all that sort of stuff, like, okay, we understand you're not in a position where you can commit to the stuff we want to do.
Well, he said he was going to play. He said, "Hey, listen, I'm not going to play WPA events. Oh, and then I am, and then I'm going to show up there and play." Then he says, "Well, you know what? I'm going to play, but I still don't agree with the bans, but I'll be there in Hanoi." And then he doesn't. You can't you couldn't have made worse moves.
Right, exactly. So I think at that point it's like, look, it's okay. You got to go take care of other stuff with whoever's pressuring you or whatever is behind your decision making. Go do that. We're gonna give the spot to somebody who wants to be there. You know what I mean? Is going to sacrifice and has been sacrificing. That's totally fine. So for them, I think it's an important decision because it does set a precedent. Like nobody's above the law. There's no,
you aren't exempt.
You're not exempt from this kind of stuff, and it happens in sporting events all the time. You know what I mean? So obviously the rules and these nuances are going to iron themselves out, and all that stuff. So I think it just kind of needed to happen probably for Matchroom. Their hand was kind of forced, I think.
Josh forced their hand,
Yeah.
And as unfortunate as it is, he's a big boy. I know he's young, but this is going to be a hard lesson for him because I've never seen anything like this when it comes to fans, especially with how passionate that the Asian fans are, and even the American fans. I mean, they don't need any more reason to love and hate filler, and so
they just need more players that can beat him. That's all.
Well, yeah, and look, he's had successes out there on WPA events. He's had successes on World Cup of Pool stages, on Mosconi stages, on World Championship stages. I mean, the guy is box office. Now, I'm a fan of Josh. I like Josh personally. I have liked him. I feel like he's been misunderstood to some extent for a long time. I've gotten a chance to speak with Josh many times. I thoroughly enjoy his company, and I think he's a good kid. I think he made a lot of poor decisions here over the last few weeks, and I do feel like he is very much impressionable when it comes to and look, it's okay for not wanting to put out the statement at the beginning, but you did, right?
I think somebody else had mentioned here, I think CPM 47 says he needs an agent, right? This is when, if you don't have certain skills which take time to develop, and
he doesn't,
and there's certain people that have certain skills that they can take certain situations in a kind of like ad lib reactive and do it with grace and poise and kind of see the bigger picture and not fall for the traps. But sometimes it's easy to fall for the traps. And that's when you defer this kind of stuff to somebody else and be like, hey, this is a public statement. Is it binding? Should I make this statement? I'm unsure. Should I say nothing? Should I, how do I handle this? You just seek counsel. And that's what, most, sporting personalities will do. They'll just like, hey,
it's not my strong suit. No, it's not your strong suit, and it's okay.
I want to go play pool, and I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, he put his feet and a few other feet in his mouth, and and it's just like, this is the kind of stuff that happens. So. Right. I understand that it's probably uncomfortable for him to deal with conflict. I probably get that from him, that he doesn't want to have to deal with conflict. So when his peers are pressuring him to do something, he's like, yeah, I'll do that. And then his, sponsors maybe pressure him to do something else. And, but to the fans, they're just looking at somebody making choices, and you're responsible for those choices. And that's just that's what being an adult is about. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think Matchroom was in a position where they kind of had to, and I think it sets they're not going to talk anything about Mosconi Cup now, I think, because they don't want to distract from the Reyes being so close. But I think it one would presume that it sets a precedent for what's going to happen with Mosconi as well, until a statement or something else
Well,
gets.
I know what I'm going to ask, but I also know where even without an answer, I know which direction I would lead into. Here's the thing: like, while I get earning your spot when it comes to off of merit, right? And he earned it with ranking points and all that. I still don't think anyone owes you anything. We don't owe you an opportunity to play on this platform when you disrespect players and promoters and things like that.
Yeah.
And I'd imagine, given the fact that there is wording in their contracts and things like that, that I'm sure they did their due diligence before putting out that statement and covered their ass. At least when it comes to the Matchroom side of things. But on Josh, and I see a lot of these guys out there saying, well, they're no better than the WPA by banning players. Look, man, at the end of the day, that's an exhibition. It's
Yeah.
not. It's.
It's an
I don't think
invitation.
they owed it to them. To say, hey, listen, if you're gonna be like this with our players, with us, with everything that we stand for and believe in, then you know what, you ain't got to play here. And if you think the grass is greener on the other side,
right. I mean, it is an exhibition. It's an invitational event. There are conditions for which you earn, a qualification to be invited, but ultimately you have to be invited by Matchroom. They have to open the door to you, and then you can spot, so they can close the door on you too if they see fit. I think that's going to be a broader discussion for them, and they have between now.
It doesn't get any bigger than Josh though, Ray, because Josh is, if you were going to say, hey, listen, I'm going to open up the top 100 players, and me and you are going to have a team, and we're going to draft, right?
Yeah, he's going to go one or two. Yeah,
he's going number one because of his experience and his pedigree and his ruthlessness out there and all of his successes, right? He's going to be the very first pick. And so for him to, whether you wanted to be a leader or not, you are, you are, and you chose to wear that crown in some regards, and to go out there and stand in solidarity with your fellow players, whether Asian or the other European players who have been getting fucked by their federations and by whoever else for the last few years or decades rather. But at the end of the day, it's a double-edged sword. It's a two-way street here, And so because you chose that route, you have to see it through, and you didn't. And so with that in mind, I don't mind them going and banning them. Now, this is also me. Look, I'm going to be out there in Manila, and whether I'd be at home or in the venue, I want to see Josh Filler play Carlo Beato. I want to see Josh face Asian, like the Asia team in Manila, because I know how great that kid can be, and I love watching him compete. I want to see him out here in Hanoi as well. I want to see him every time there's a pool table with the camera on it, because the kid is just an absolute phenom, and just fun to watch. But we don't owe you the fucking stage to go and play on. And this is me loving Josh and love seeing him play. And it's a hard reality right now. And I think, like, with all this, they could go and put out a statement as well. Josh was informed before that statement was put out there. Still radio silence, as far as I can tell, online from him.
Probably a good idea. I think.
Is it though? You can't get any worse. I'd rather you come out and at least put your opinion out there, is what I would say.
I think he should reflect and take time on what's going on, let the dust settle, and then figure out exactly what he wants to do. If he wants the relationship to change with Matchroom, then he should approach Matchroom privately and then make a statement once they've come to an agreement. If not, then he should just continue about his business and keep playing WPA events and maybe play Matchroom Opens, and who knows what his tour status will be, as far as, like, maybe they remove his tour card. Maybe he doesn't even keep a tour card. Maybe he has to come and play as a qualifier and then, win tournaments, just that would be hilarious. I mean, maybe, but I think he's done enough talking publicly on Facebook for a little bit, and it's hurt him. I think he should regroup and figure out exactly what he wants to do, and if it's worth his time to even try and course correct. Ultimately, there has to be a healthy amount of not really caring people think, like for you to be self-assured and kind of keep going. I think just being tactful about how you share those things and when you share them is where you can avoid,
The pitfalls.
stepping in a landmine. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
you're going to be clear about a decision and say it, and and this is where I stand on this. That's great. People respect that when you walk that walk also. You know what I mean? So I think he's just kind of been like in the short term kind of ADD looking at, how to do it, kind of bit him in the face. So
I can tell you guys, I have not reached out to Josh, and usually I don't mind reaching out to players when it comes to, touchy situations. I also don't like wasting my time either. So I'd be surprised if you would agree. Although I probably will send a message just to see if by chance he'll say yes. What I can tell you though is I'll be out at the venue today. I plan on asking some questions out there and seeing what other.
The decent shot match, man. I was watching the
first. I haven't. How's he doing?
He was up 8-0.
This is why I didn't mind doing it at the beginning of the Hanoi Open. So that's if there's any indication. What I can tell you though, no disrespect to his opponent though. But if there's a time to do it, it would be day one. The Hanoi Open is great. The venue is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a little humid though. I'll tell you that, Ray. Being in there, it's a little.
I'm from Florida. I know. It's okay.
No. Listen, I said the same thing. I said, listen, I'm from South Texas. It'll be all right with the humidity. It's a different level of humidity being out here. By the way, Ray, I hope you guys are doing all right and getting ready for the hurricane if it's coming your way, man.
Yeah, it's coming this way. I think the idea is there's a cold front coming in from the north that should decrease the category from Godzilla storm to just like your normal hurricane category 3. But it's going to cause a lot of dissipation, a lot of rain, and the storms are going to be strong over by the coast. So West Coast people are going to be probably, if you're in the coastal areas, evacuating.
Get out.
Or be in a position where you're triple reinforced and elevated and all this other stuff. So everybody will make their decisions, but I feel like people who don't live in Florida, they get this like crazy panic whenever there's a storm that comes our way, and it's just kind of like, Floridians have been doing it for a while. We're seasoned veterans. So
I live on the Gulf, right there on the water, and it's always a scary time of year. Anything through 2, it's fine. You can, in my opinion, I've stayed and weathered the storm, literally. Yeah. But when it gets 3+, especially heading into a 4 and a 5, it's
for us.
Take care of yourself.
Maybe it's me. I grew up in Miami and went through Andrew, and so hurricane doesn't become a hurricane until it's like category 4. Then you're like, oh, okay, now it's time to.
Now we better, We if whatever decision you make, don't make it too late. No, is all I'll ask for, buddy. We love having you guys around. Hopefully, you and your family stay safe and dry.
Yeah, well, Florida, so we're just gonna get a lot of rain because it is supposed to weaken as it hits the coast, and then it'll probably be like a 3/2 when it gets to us. So it'll just be a lot of rain and wind and stuff. So, we should be fine.
Hopefully so. I plan on taking off here in a little bit, you guys. It's been a crazy day, and when all this stuff came out of, first the players not showing up, well, like the name players not showing up, and then some of these other guys who pulled up last minute who were on the players list. Talking with a lot of players as far as how they felt with everything going down, and just this level of feeling betrayed. It's players like Josh and like a million other guys. They just want to play pool, and they don't want to be pawns in this war and be forced to choose a side. They want to be able to do what they want, when they want, how they want, and have that freedom. But when you're on the top of the stage, Ray, you have like it's heavy. And you have to be able to fade it, whether it's criticism online or be a leader and make uncomfortable or unpopular decisions depending on what crowd of people that you're around. I think the damage has long been done for Josh over the last few weeks. It sucks to see because, like I said, I'm a big fan of that young man personally.
he's such a great player that I think he will be successful regardless of whatever the initial social backlash is. And ultimately, I think like these conversations and tough moments, whenever they do pop up, tend to kind of cause friction to the point where resolution pops up. And so my hope is that, these conversations will lead to ideas and resolution amongst the organizers, because nobody really wants to be, having to leverage this stuff and being forced to kind of defend these positions. You know what I mean? They just want the players to play. They want to put on a good show. They want to grow the sport, and they want to bring, obviously Hanoi and Vietnam is a beautiful area of the world, and a lot of beautiful people who love love pool as much as we all do. So, it's a shame for them that they don't get to see some of these top players because of the politics involved behind it. But hopefully, these things kind of lead to better discussions, better ideas, and people just kind of coming to the table with good intentions, so that the players do get to make these decisions and play whenever they want, and not have to worry about sanctioning or lack of invitation or sponsorships and all that stuff. So
I don't think, given everything that I've been hearing, there's any hope for any kind of reconciliation with Matchroom and the WPA. I just don't. And any players who are hoping that's going to happen, I think are living in the pipe dream, so to speak. And it's unfortunate, but this is the current landscape right now. There's a lot of opportunity for a lot of players, and with Josh being out, there's opportunity for guys like David, who, boy, did he just fall into a really great spot there. How good does that guy run?
It said, like, man, that guy runs so good.
It's unreal, man. First Federer a couple of years ago and gets a Mosconi Cup spot, and then now Josh, and here he is again. But it's a credit to, listen, David's in his mid-40s, but he's still playing top tier and is right there on the fringe, and he earned his spot on merit also,
And he's had a really solid like last quarter of the year, half of the year, because like he's transitioned to Peach Hour, and like you can tell that he's back, like,
which is not easy to do, to make a big switch, not on their level.
And I've watched him play a few times recently up close, and he's really back to playing really solid and steady and getting after it. So yeah,
I can tell you guys, I've reached out to the WPA. Shockingly, they have not gotten back to me. I've reached out to Predator back in February whenever I was at the Rio and got the cold shoulder. So I don't expect them to reach out. I know I'm not going to again, just because I don't like wasting my time. I'd rather get like a, we're not going to comment kind of response than nothing at all. I think that today, or last night rather, you learn that ain't nobody's ass untouchable anymore.
I mean,
and you have to send that message, Ray.
Yeah, you have to. And I brought that up in conversation earlier. I'm like, it's kind of like probably the best thing that could have happened really for Matchroom, even though in the short term, there's this other stuff. Like it lends a lot of credibility to them, and the players now trust that whatever they say they're going to do, and there is no kind of like, untouchable, person that can just ignore, whatever they're requesting of their top players. Like they're gonna hold accountable what needs to be held accountable on their end. And so I think in a way it strengthens their position, honestly. I think they had to do that. So,
well, we'll see at the cost. I'm sure that the views are still going to be just as great when it comes to the Reyes Cup. I'm curious to see what the Mosconi Cup is going to look like. And if you're, listen, I know you're Mr. USA, rah, 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 Ray. If you're an American fan, you better be rooting Josh doesn't make it on that team, buddy, or gets the boot off that team, because it's a whole different ball game without killer filler on that team. And if you get a couple rookies that make it into that team, it's a whole different game.
Assuming it plays out the way we think it's going to play out, first of all, Mickey Krause, congratulations. He's playing great. But if we get Mickey Team Europe and we get a plus Mickey and a minus Josh, and, that's a strong fantasy, if you're playing fantasy football, that's a strong swap, because you have a rookie and then you lose probably your best player on the team. Mickey's playing awesome, of course. He's, I admire what he's been doing out there. He's been posting streams and matching up.
He's not Josh. He's playing very well, very well.
But it's not a proven vet who's out there crushing it in that stage, who's like just inflappable for sure, So, and then, Team USA is playing really good. I mean, I love the batch of guys that we're looking at right now have all been playing I mean, really solid pool all year long, and everybody looks like they're picking it up. So it's a good time, I think, for USA to position themselves well. Maybe they'll roll into Orlando a little early, and I'll try and tune them up or something. I don't know. We'll see.
That's what they need. The Ray Linares School of Pool. We'll be live in the morning, you guys. Well, if you're in the U.S., another 12 or so hours, 10 hours from now, out here in Hanoi. Ray, if you're available, I'd love to have you back on. I'm going to try to get Mike on and do another show, and love to have you guys part of the conversation and just really just continue it, because I know Mike's got a lot of things to say, and of course he's got a lot of history covering the game, and has spoken with a lot of players. So I can't wait to get him on and speak more about it as well. So
is Mike asleep or something? What's going on?
Well, I texted him like it would have been 8 o'clock in the morning here, so about 8 p.m. back home. And I said, hey, are you still free? And then I fell back to sleep again, because I'm telling you, man, I've maybe gotten like 2 to 3 hours of sleep every day since I've been here. It's been really tough on me. And so last night and today, I finally got like really good sleep. But I wanted to do the show, man, and I wasn't expecting like this whole shit of things coming on, because it's like I thought, okay, we all know like all the drama was the players not showing up. I didn't think we were gonna have this come on like the 11th hour. And so anyhow, we'll have more reaction, more news. I'll be out there, like I said, at the venue, and we'll ask more questions. Big shout out to all of our sponsors who help make the show happen. I could not be out here without them. You see them on the Windows Open page. You see them on the screen as well. Big props to them. And so anyhow, we'll see you guys real soon. Ray, thanks for joining us, out of the blue. And you guys have a great rest of your day or evening.